Hello, this is Lewis with a quick video demonstrating the new firewall features on the PredictWind hub. So to get started, you Wi-Fi connect to the DataHub and then you log in as admin. The default password is admin, or if you've changed it, then select the password that's been configured for the system. Once you're connected, navigate over to the settings and you will be presented with first of all, internet status. Internet status indicates the interfaces that have connections to the internet. The iOS and Android blocks correspond to USB connected phones, whereas the WWWAN interface, or the WWAN interface, corresponds to a Wi-Fi bridge to an access point that has internet, and the WAN is the WAN port Ethernet on the back of the hub. So for this particular device, we have one connection, which is the WAN port. Next to the internet status, you'll see a firewall tab. So clicking on that will take you to the firewall entry. Now note that the firewall entry only works for the interfaces WAN and WWAN. So basically the Wi-Fi bridge or an Ethernet connection. The USB phones are not firewalled, and it is assumed that those are open to the internet. Now, typically you wouldn't want to use a firewall if you had an internet connection through a broadband device that had inexpensive airtime, but if you're connecting through any number of satellite devices that have expensive and slow internet connections, such as, for example, a Fleet 1 or a Fleet Broadband by Inmarsat, or a Certus 200 or a Certus 700 Iridium device, or possibly a KVH or VSAT broadband system, then you'd want to use the firewall to restrict access to the services. So one of note that the Iridium Go exec implements its own firewall, so there's no need to use this feature with that particular product. The hub knows how to program the firewall on the hub. On the firewall on the Iridium Go exec, and it will program it to limit all traffic except for the PredictWind servers that it needs to do its tasks. Also note that no matter what you do to the firewall settings, all Predict services, including weather and email, will continue to work no matter what settings are selected. So you can't stop the use of PredictMail. So in an instance where you're only using tracking or maybe AIS broadcast, offshore PredictWind weather, or email services using PredictMail, you can block everything and those services will continue to work. So let me just go through a few of these settings. They're pretty straightforward and simple and somewhat self-explanatory. The block WAN by default is turned off, which allows you to log in remotely through the Ethernet port on the hub, or through the Wi-Fi link. In other words, if you are connecting the hub to a local network on your vessel and you wanted to access it through that connection, then you wouldn't want to block the WAN. However, if the hub is connected to a satellite device that has a public IP address, then you probably want to block that, because the scanners on the internet would then be able to find that IP address and generate traffic as they try to break into your hub. So again, it's off by default with the assumption that the hub is going to be installed on a local network on the vessel, but if it is the last device to the internet, then you probably want to block that. The next one is the internet priority. By default, the hub will send traffic through the WAN port followed by the Wi-Fi bridge port. So if you have both Wi-Fi and WAN connected, as in possibly you might have a Starlink connected to the Wi-Fi port through a Wi-Fi bridge, and say a KVH satellite device connected to the WAN port, then you would want the priority to be changed so that traffic goes over Wi-Fi first and then to the WAN. Similarly, if you had a Starlink and an Iridium Go exec, you probably want to change the order as well. And so this basically sets the priority for the traffic flow depending on which interface which interface you want to have high priority. So it's kind of a least cost routing. The cheaper, faster of the internet connections should go first. So we'll leave it at WAN since I don't have a Wi-Fi, although changing it in this particular instance would make no difference because we only have one interface. But if you have two, you might want to consider playing with this option. Finally, we have a firewall policy, and you can select open, which is the default, block all, which blocks all traffic through the WAN port and through the Wi-Fi bridge, or you can have the WAN open and block the Wi-Fi, and vice versa. So for example, in the case where you had a Starlink connected via Wi-Fi and you had a KVH connected to the Ethernet port, then you would want the Starlink to be totally open, but you would want to block traffic going to the KVH device. And so you would select these appropriately depending on your setup. Finally, if you do select block all, you have the option of blocking DNS or enabling DNS. Now, DNS stands for Domain Name Services. The internet really doesn't know what a name is, such as google.com. It has to connect to servers that have IP addresses. And so there's a distributed database on the internet called Domain Name Services, which translates textual names or textual host names into IP addresses. That can generate a lot of traffic, even though the firewall might be all closed up. So you block traffic to the internet, yet you still have processes on your local devices that are doing lookups for, Windows updates and, maybe Firefox browser updates, Apple.com, Google.com, and so forth. So that generates a lot of traffic. And so if you have a restricted internet access, or want to restrict internet access, it's a good thing to block DNS. Now, once you block DNS, any application that uses a name, a textual name, to access a server on the internet won't be unable to because it can't look up its name. However, you can add a whitelist. So for example, say you wanted WhatsApp to work, but nothing else. Well, you can put in WhatsApp.net and WhatsApp.com into the list and then do a save and apply. And what that will do is it'll block all traffic to the internet. It'll turn off DNS, but allow DNS entries for these two devices and program for these two hosts and program the firewall to allow traffic for those hosts to go through. And so that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it, to the firewall. Until next time, we'll see you later. This is Louis. Check it out. Bye.